Be very careful what you say. Just stick to the facts. Jose de Ribera, 1591 to 1652. I memorized that when I was a teenager. I was an office boy in London's Charing Cross Road. If it rained during my lunch break, I used to pop into the National Gallery just around the corner. I would sit and stare at the paintings, lost in another world. That was where I first saw de Ribera's work. Oh, it made a big impression on me. I never imagined that when I retired I'd come and live in Spain. When I see a church that's open, I like to go in and have a look around. De Ribera was born in Játiva, Valencia, but he spent most of his working life in Naples, where he was known as Lo Spagnoletto, the Little Spaniard. This version of the Passion is attributed to him and considered to be a fine example of his style, known as brutal realism.
Oh, perdone, madre mía, todo mi dinero. Yeah, pero...
I picked up the coins I'd accidentally knocked out of her hand. Suddenly...
Have you seen it?
Seen it? Seen what?
The painting, the Ribera painting. Is it too late?
I'd no idea what she meant. Then I became aware that she was following me. Look, what is it? What do you want?
I need to talk to you.
Living in Spain, I was used to seeing beggars, but never one so self-assured and well-educated. She told me her name was Pilar, and that she and her family had lived in Madrid, but like so many others in that city, liked to escape the heat and come down to the coast in August.
My parents had a lovely apartment here in Torreviejas. It was on the Plaza Miguel Hernández. It was lovely, spacious, nothing like the hovel where I live now.
She told me her father became famous for his lectures on the great Spanish masters, Velázquez, El Greco, Goya, of course, but most of all on de Ribera. He seemed to have been obsessed by the man.
Chiaroscuro, chiaroscuro. He would repeat that word to me day after day. Texture, darkness into light. One day my father came home carrying a parcel. He was very excited. I found it, he said. The last painting that de Ribera ever completed. The picture haunted me. It was in my dreams, night after night.
I was sure I knew what she was going to say next.
The picture, the one you were looking at in the church. A few days after my father found the painting, I was to celebrate my first Holy Communion. I was really looking forward to it. But somehow the church seemed different. The candles seemed to exaggerate the darkness beyond. Chiaroscura, the word chiaroscura kept repeating itself in my mind. I looked sideways at the huge figure of Christ on the cross. He seemed transfigured. His eyes opened and he looked directly at me, just like in the picture that my father owns. Later it was said that I fainted. The incense, the emotion of the scene. They said I was a very sensitive child.
Following her communion, Pilar and her family returned to Madrid. Her father took Pilar to see a specialist, the same doctor who was attending her mother.
My mother's name was Mercedes. She was very gentle. She never judged me. Only later did I learn that she had problems and she had to be admitted to a clinic. My father was afraid that I was coming down with the same symptoms, that I had inherited her schizophrenia. When I was 14, we heard that my mother had committed suicide. Shortly thereafter, my father was given a really good business opportunity in New York City. He thought it would be good for us. But it was the 1960s, huh? The drug scene, I got very involved. I went completely off the rails. Then my father's business began to fail. Due to his partner, he lost everything. So we came back to Spain, here to Torreviejas, to the flat we had here.
It was at this point that Pilar's father was contacted by someone writing a book about de Ribera.
The writer was particularly interested in the painting my father owned. Legend had it that the face of Christ was really de Ribera's face, and it showed his mental anguish. To the point when people look at it, they actually get very affected by it.
True or not, the painting was certainly surrounded by superstition. After de Ribera's death, it was thought that the painting had been destroyed because his son began to show signs of schizophrenia. As for Pilar's own mental condition, that got worse, and she entered a retreat run by the Carmelite order.
A few years later, my father passed away, and I came back to Torreviejas for his funeral. I had to sell his apartment because he had mortgaged it to be able to live. So there was no money left. Couldn't even pay the insurance on the painting. So I gave it to the church for safekeeping.
Pilar thought about selling the painting, but in those days the experts just couldn't agree as to whether it was a genuine de Ribera work or simply a copy made by one of his many students. Of course, Pilar tried to find work, but in her mental condition it was impossible, and she was finally reduced to begging. I'd been so mesmerized by her story that I didn't ask any of the questions that now began to trouble me greatly.
When you left the church, I looked into your eyes. I knew you had seen the painting. Keep away from it.
Pilar, wait! And then suddenly she was gone. I searched for her for days. I even asked beggars I saw in the street if they knew where she was, but nobody did. She'd completely vanished off the face of the earth. The picture haunted me, just as it had haunted Pilar as a child. If it could be proved to be authentic, to have been painted by de Ribera himself, then Pilar would be rich. There were people I knew in London. I could contact them. And so, despite her warning, I decided I must look at that painting again, just to see the painting once more. Suddenly, I felt I was being watched. Our Saviour was hanging on the cross. He was looking down at me, and I could see that he was suffering because of me. He was in agony because of my sins. I'd put him there. I'd put him there. I'd put him there. It was me. 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 It was me.
Catalina María Márquez, como tuviste valor. Como tuviste valor, Catalina María Márquez, como tuviste valor de casarte con Paluca y estando en el mundo yo. Como tuviste valor, Catalina María Márquez, como tuviste valor de casarte con Paluca y estando en el mundo yo.